Holy moly, guys, have you ever needed a cheap 8-seater SUV? Well, you're in luck, because today we're taking a look at a 2011 Ford Expedition. All right, I'll come out now. That's right, today we got my personal 2011 Ford Expedition. I bought this thing almost a year ago for $800 because it has 240,000 miles on it. And today we're gonna decide if this thing is a buy or if it's a bust. Starting our outside walk around on this Expedition here. This is a 2011, which is right in the middle of this generation. They ran from 07 to 17, pretty long run for these things. And I always thought that these actually looked pretty nice. I think Ford did a good job. Now, though, what they didn't do a good job with is rust. Rust is pretty normal and kind of catastrophic on these. This one is no exception, as you saw there at the beginning. The body, the frame, all of it are pretty terrible when it comes to rust. The fully boxed frame underneath just holds the salt and water over time. Now this one was kept on a dirt driveway. It was actually pretty well cared for, but it was on a dirt driveway and it kind of rusted from the bottom up. But really, truly, to make them drivable, you have to spend a ton of money on frame repair. And unfortunately, it's not just the Expeditions, the F-150s did the same thing because they ran the same type of frame. But anything pretty much underneath of them, rust. This one has had the control arms replaced because they've rust through. The rocker panels have already been replaced. It's just had some major rust issues. Now, as we move to the back of the Expedition here, this is one of the other big and common almost on every single one is paint peeling. The corrosion starts on the hatch specifically. It's where almost all of them have this issue. Right around the emblem and the bezel here, just paint just peels off and looks pretty nasty over time. Even if you got a pretty clean one, like the body on this car is pretty clean, but that makes it look pretty rough. Everywhere else on it, they actually get the paint to shine and look pretty nice. I've seen a couple where the hood will peel and things like that, but it's pretty much just that hatch and it's just the rust underneath. Those are the two exterior issues. Under the hood here, we got the 5.4 liter V8, the Triton V8 that makes 310 horsepower, 365 pound-feet of torque. Now this engine is running nice and quiet, but that was one of the funnier under hood shots I've had because I've noticed a slight coolant smell in this thing for like a month, and I have not investigated it at all. It hasn't overheated, but I saw today when I revved it up hard where exactly it's leaking, and it's from the fitting over there. So coolant leaks might be an issue on your 5.4 liter Triton. Now luckily that coolant leak is going to be a non-issue. We'll be able to fix that really quickly, so I wouldn't even really worry about that. One of the things that I do want to worry about, and this is the number one issue with these, is cam phaser issues. And this has been a problem with Ford for a long time, and these engines are no different. Now, this particular one, luckily I have the maintenance records, and this vehicle made it to 142,000 miles before it needed its cam phasers and all of the timing stuff on the front of the engine replaced. That's a pretty typical number on these engines, is 100 to 150,000 miles before you have major engine issues. Oil changes and things do actually help those issues a fair amount, but it pretty much happens to all of these over time. If you hear a kind of knocking sound when you start the engine up, that's usually cam phasers are starting to go bad. And if you're wondering how the price of that worked, because I have the receipt, now this was many years ago, the Ford garage charged $2,200 to get this thing back up and running. I think we're probably going to be running into cam phaser issues again on this, but it actually has nothing. It is a super quiet engine at this point. We put another 100,000 miles onto it, but that's right around the time where we're going to have a problem again. Now, luckily, these engines do not have as many of the spark plug related issues. If you want to look that up, you can on some of the older generation Ford engines, but they can still have an issue, coil pack, different things like that, that cause a misfire, but it's not as common on these as it was in the prior generations. One other issue with this engine, and this is not a major issue, and Chevy's had this problem too, is exhaust manifold cracks, exhaust manifold bolts breaking. Just makes an annoying sound. It'll go tick, 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 because there's air coming out of the engine where it shouldn't be, and it's making noise. it could cause other issues for you, but generally it does not. I wouldn't be worried about it at all, other than it's an annoying sound. This engine is mated to a 6-speed automatic transmission. This one shifts pretty well. It'll have a hard shift every now and then. That's to be expected with something that has 240,000 miles on it. There is some issues with these on fluid changes as well as the valve body. Usually it's not necessarily a catastrophic failure. It's something you can fix somewhat inexpensively, but it is a problem on these. Now, anytime I have a Ford, I'll highlight how much I love the buttons. The buttons should be standard on every vehicle for your code to get in. Now, I don't know it for this, so that's kind of useless. But if you know the buttons, they're very helpful. They know the code, they're very helpful. Inside the interior here in the Expedition. Now, this I actually would say is one of the highlights. I have been in the Chevys. I've been in a bunch of other full-size SUVs. And this is probably my favorite interior. It is work-like. It is not, there's lots of hard plastic and things, but they wear pretty well. They just generally don't have like a ton of rattles, anything like that. And I think they're just laid out in a really smart way. Now, while they do wear pretty well, there is a few things that I'll talk about that aren't working perfectly on this one. Number one would be the seat on the passenger side. The perforations have ripped over time and made the seat really ugly. It just needs a new leather seat bottom put in. It's a little bit of an in-depth project, honestly, for an $800 vehicle, but it's probably something I'll do down the road. The other things, windows, real slow. The actuators, motors, could just need greased up, but probably just need replaced at this point. They're really slow going up and down, and if it's cold or anything like that, they pretty much just don't work. Now, one of the typical problems on these is HVAC. So that means your heat and your air. The blend doors and things inside, and those are what make your heat go from hot to cold, or feet to your face, or whatever, or defrost. There's little motors inside there, and those tend to go bad. Sometimes it's also the controller up here. This one actually works fine right now, but every once in a while I'll have an issue where it either is blowing cold or hot when I don't want it to, and there's nothing you can do really other than either fix the thing, or sometimes you just wait, you shut the car off and then you turn it back on and then it resets itself and it kind of works. But that is a problem that this one has had a few times, but not enough for me to want to tear apart the dash. Another thing, if you live in a cold climate, that's nice to check is always check to see if the heated seats work. I love heated seats. The driver's one does not work on this car, and that drives me nuts. Now, it does have cooled seats, and those work, and those are pretty nice in the summer. It's cool that a car that's now almost 15 years old has cooled seats, and the fact that it was $800 and has all those options is pretty fun. They do offer a lot of value for the money you spend on them. In the second row here of the Expedition, this is not the long version of the Expedition. This is the shorter, more Tahoe-like, I guess, Expedition. And this seat is comfortable for where I would sit up front, and I'm 5'9". I still got plenty of room. I will say the seat sits low. I feel like a little kid almost kind of back here. My legs are all propped up, but it's not uncomfortable, but there's better options out there. This is a loaded up one, like I said, so it's got radio, it's got, all your heat and air in the rear that you can set yourself. It also has a 110 household outlet that kind of half works, but when it works, it's really nice. It just wears out over time. The prongs get loose inside there. But no, it's fine. It's fine. I do think some of the other large SUVs on the market were a little more comfortable for the second row. Now, getting into the rear is not terrible. It's also not great. You just got to pull this handle twice, and I messed it up. There you go. In the third row, actually, the third row, I think, is almost a highlight of this car. It's about the same comfort level as the second row. I actually like how the seat sits a little bit nicer. It sits up higher, what I was complaining about on that one. Now, the bottom is a little bit shorter, which isn't as nice, but leg room, everything like that is pretty similar to what you have up front. And one of the nice things, and most SUVs do this, is these seats all do lay pretty much flat to each other, which allows you to put just about anything in here. I don't know that you could quite fit a full sheet of plywood in here, being that this is not the longer version, but you can still use it for work or anything like that if you need. Now, in my terribly paint-peeled hatch, one of the nice things is it is an automatic hatch, which was just coming out kind of prior to like 2007. So it was definitely 50-50 on whether something like this would have it. What I did not know that they had is we do have automatic seat drop and back up for this third row. Now, in case you're looking at one of these and this being flat is very important to you, I should mention that that seat, the cargo mode where it goes down another like 4 inches, you can see on this side, does not work. That side works fine. This one here, that seat should drop down another 4 inches or so into the floor, and it's not doing it. Now, one of the things I should mention, because I think this is important that people don't think about, they see that it seats 8 people, and it does, but it doesn't seat 8 people and cargo. The only amount of cargo, if you're using the third row, is this little spot right here. You cannot really even put a suitcase back here, just a couple backpacks. So you're not going to the airport with your whole family in this thing if that's what you want to do, unless you're going to get a roof carrier or something. If you want to do that, you need to go to the long wheelbase Expedition, a Suburban, a minivan, something like that that has space behind the rear seat, because this basically has none. All right, here we go. We're pulling out of the driveway in our 2011 Expedition. All right, now I can hear some road noise right off the bat from the holes through the body from the rust. So that's a concerning thing. But luckily our seats are attached well to the floor. It's just the second row that are not. Now, obviously I know a little bit more about this one than a lot of the cars we review because it's my personal one. I've had it for about a year now. And I do drive it somewhat regularly, but not overly often. And one of the reasons for that is the fuel mileage on these, I think, is terrible. Now, this was when SUVs were using some more fuel, but they were starting to become more fuel efficient, where they're getting at least like 18, 20, and this is rated at 14 and 16, and my real world driving is right in the middle of those things. It is not a fuel efficient vehicle. Yeah, it's just not. We're gonna get on it a little bit here. All right, you know, it pulls okay. It's not fast, but it's not supposed to be. And one of the good things about these is with that 365 pound-feet of torque, these are rated, depending on your configuration, between 88 and 9,200 pounds of towing, which is just crazy. I would not want to tow anything that heavy with this, but I guess people could if you wanted to. Now, we have been on a bumpy back road here on our test, and I actually hear no real squeaks, clunks, anything like that. Now, part of that is because this has had some suspension work done to it. I personally did the lower control arms on it, and I know the prior owner before I bought it, and I've only put a few thousand miles on, did brand new struts in the front and did upper control arms. So that stuff's already been taken care of. One of the things that is common on these, if you live in the rusty areas, and I hate to keep harping on the rust issues, but the steering shaft actually gets a little rusty and corroded and makes your steering a little bit tight. Now, if you just use some PB Blaster or something, usually that will free it up. And I've had to do that a few times on this one. I can actually feel it now as we're driving around the corners that the steering just feels heavy. And it's not loose or anything like that. It just feels like you're fighting it a little bit around the corners. Do another pull. Yeah, I think the Suburbans and Tahoes are faster, but this is fine. I mean, they should be. They have more power. So now, a few other things we need to talk about that you might want to look out for. One, sync issues. Ford has had the Microsoft Sync as their infotainment system for a long time, and it's just not very good. This one's constant problems. Sometimes your Bluetooth will connect, sometimes it won't. It will randomly tell me that 911 is either connected or disconnected. I can't remember which one it says, but it just says that randomly. And yeah, just overall a really clunky system. Obviously this is old now and most of the systems were clunky, but unfortunately this one's like where you just pretty much have to replace the radio. The other thing that this one has, but I don't know how overly common it is it has a four-wheel drive clunk. Some people say it's a transfer case. Sometimes it can be the front differential. I really don't know. I haven't investigated it. I've only used the four-wheel drive on like 2 occasions, and it functionally works, but it does make some clunking. We are back from the test drive, and now it's time to decide if this thing is a buy or if it's a bust. Now, I hope it's a buy because this is my personal vehicle and I'd like to get some good use out of it, right? Now, I only gave $800 for this, but you shouldn't really expect that. I did that because it was a deal and it was close to home and it has the rust issues that I've showed you guys. But let's pretend you're looking at one that has 150 or 200,000 miles on it. And that price range is gonna vary a lot depending on condition, but you're probably in the $4,000 to $6,000 range for a pretty nice one. Are you gonna get another 100,000 miles out of it if you buy it with that many miles already on it? And the answer is probably no. The timing chain cam phaser issues are so prevalent. They're kind of, I feel like, a nickel and dime vehicle where you're probably gonna put more work into it than what you intend. And I'd rather you get something that's trouble-free. They're not terrible. There's just better options on the market. I think the Suburban and Tahoe are a better option. And for that reason, I think we're gonna have to declare this a bust. It's a close one. There's a reason they sold so many of them. Some people really like them, but I think they just have a few too many problems for me to recommend it as a buy to someone, then expect them to get trouble-free use for a long period of time. If you have one of these, let me know. I wanna know your thoughts and what your problems you've had. If you've experienced some of the stuff that we talked about in the video here, put it all in the comments down below. Thank you for watching.